Welcome to the debate. When human engineers design a fluid dynamic system, efficiency is basically the baseline.
Right. You want one central, powerful engine doing all the continuous work.
Exactly. But then you look at the octopus. Here's an animal with 3 hearts running on highly viscous copper-based blood, and its main pump physically shuts down the moment it accelerates.
It's an absolute evolutionary marvel. And it really forces us to question, what actually drove this biological design.
Yeah, so were these 3 hearts primarily an adaptation to handle the immense physiological burden of their blood chemistry? I argue the architecture is fundamentally driven by that chemistry.
And I contend that the anatomy is actually defined by the severe physiological limits of their locomotion.
So let's start with the chemistry. Octopuses rely on hemocyanin. That's a copper-rich protein used to transport oxygen.
Which makes their blood incredibly viscous, right?
Right, exactly. We aren't talking about pumping water here. We're talking about trying to force, like cold syrup, through microscopic capillaries in the ocean.
It's a huge burden.
Right, so a single heart would just blow a valve, trying to push that thick fluid through the whole body. So they evolved 2 dedicated branchial hearts, meaning they sit right at the gills, acting purely as localized booster pumps.
Just to force that heavy blood through the oxygenation process.
Exactly. And that leaves the third, systemic heart, to handle body circulation. So the 3-heart architecture is basically a necessary chemical workaround.
Well, the hemocyanin viscosity is a massive factor, for sure. But if this were purely a chemical workaround, this system would be built to support the animal under physical stress.
Okay, but it does support them.
Does it, though? We have to look at the mechanics of jet propulsion. When an octopus swims, it forcefully expels water from its mantle. Those intense muscle contractions physically squeeze the systemic heart so tightly that it literally cannot expand to fill with blood. The heart just arrests.
Well, yeah, it stops beating.
Right. To me, that means the 3-heart design is an adaptation to a biological engine that structurally fails during movement.
I understand the mantle compression issue. But think about those branchial hearts as booster pumps in an industrial pipeline.
Okay.
If you have to move a chemically challenging, syrupy fluid through a high-resistance filtration system, like the gills, you absolutely need staged pressure.
Sure, but
Let me just finish the thought. The fact that the systemic heart gets squeezed during jet propulsion seems like a secondary side effect to me. The core crisis nature had to solve was just keeping this viscous hemocyanin moving at baseline.
But that quote-unquote side effect entirely defines how the animal lives. If the ultimate goal of an industrial pipeline is consistent delivery, this one systematically fails the moment the operator hits the gas pedal.
Because it's prioritizing the baseline.
Because the systemic heart is crushed by the mantle contractions. An actively swimming octopus is essentially sprinting while holding its breath. That mechanical pressure dictates everything.
Well, wait, they still hunt perfectly well.
But it's why they crawl, why they hide, and why they ambush. The locomotion constraint is so severe that you can't just brush it off as a side effect of the blood chemistry.
I'm not brushing it off. I'm saying that structural compromise only exists because of the chemical constraint in the first place.
How so?
Nature had to over-engineer this massive 3-stage pumping mechanism just to meet the baseline metabolic needs of a creature running on hemocyanin.
Right, the constraints stack.
Exactly. The fact that the mantle crushes the systemic heart during a swim just highlights the extreme physiological tightrope the animal is already walking. If their blood wasn't so thick and hard to oxygenate, they wouldn't need such a bulky cardiovascular layout crammed into a flexible sac in the first place.
Yeah, but the immediate penalty is locomotive. You don't see an octopus struggling to sit still and process hemocyanin.
True.
You see them immediately exhausted the second they try to use jet propulsion for more than just a quick escape. Their cardiovascular limits strictly dictate their ambush predator lifestyle.
It really brings us to a fascinating conceptual tension. Are these 3 hearts a masterful chemical workaround to force highly viscous fluid through a complex organism?
Or are they a severely constrained locomotive system that ultimately dictates why an octopus relies on crawling rather than swimming?
Exactly. Though I think we definitely converge on the reality that the resulting biology is just astonishing.
Oh, absolutely. The idea that such a highly intelligent, capable predator operates with a primary engine that halts right during peak exertion, it makes nature incredibly wild.
It truly does. And looking at this through multiple biological lenses, whether prioritizing the viscosity of hemocyanin or the mechanics of mantle contraction, it deepens our understanding of evolutionary trade-offs. For sure.
It's a great reminder that evolution rarely optimizes for everything simultaneously.
Right, sometimes you get brilliant camouflage and complex problem solving, but you sacrifice the ability to go for a sustained swim. There is definitely so much more to explore in how these animals negotiate their survival.
Absolutely.
Going back to our human engineers, you would probably get fired for designing a pipeline engine that deliberately shuts off when you need maximum thrust. But nature made it work, leaving us to wonder which constraint truly shapes the machine.